Amelia Brooks sat at her desk, fingers flying across the keyboard, while the office pulsed with the chaotic rhythm of a Monday morning. Phones rang non-stop, printers hummed, and colleagues brushed past in a blur of coffee cups and urgency. She narrowed her eyes at her screen, double-checking the report she'd finalized just minutes earlier. Every number had to be perfect. Then, Brooks, the voice sliced through the noise like a blade. Richard Hale, her boss, tall, impeccably dressed, and always carrying the weight of authority like it was tailored into his suit. He strode toward her with clipped precision, a single sheet of paper clenched in his hand. Amelia turned, unsure what had gone wrong. Before she could ask, he slammed the paper onto her desk. "What is this?" he barked. She glanced at it and saw the problem immediately. A tiny accounting error, a number misplaced in the spreadsheet. Before she could explain, Richard's voice rose, echoing through the whole office. "This is useless work. Do you even know what you're doing? Or are you just here to waste everyone's time?" His words were sharp, cruel, and deliberate. Every head in the office turned. People froze in place, their eyes flicking nervously between Amelia and Richard. No one said a word. Some looked down at their desks, pretending not to hear. Amelia felt heat rush to her face. She opened her mouth to explain, but nothing came out. Her throat was tight, her chest heavy. She had worked late to finish this report. She had double-checked it, but somehow she had missed that one number. And now he was shouting at her like she was worthless. "You've been here 3 years, and this is what you give me." Richard snapped, shaking the paper. Pathetic, absolutely pathetic. Her hands trembled under the desk. She blinked quickly, forcing back tears. She wouldn't cry. Not here, not in front of him, not in front of everyone. The room was silent, except for Richard's breathing, heavy with anger. Amelia looked around. Her co-workers avoided her eyes. No one would stand up for her. Not Jenna from accounting, not Mark from sales. No one. Something inside Amelia shifted. For months, she had swallowed this kind of treatment. She had told herself it was just work, that it would get better. But now, in front of everyone, with Richard towering over her and calling her useless, something inside her broke. And at the same time, something else woke up. Without saying a word, Amelia reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. Her hands no longer shook. She stood up, her chair sliding back with a soft scrape. Richard frowned, confused by her calmness. She placed the envelope on his desk. "You won't have to worry about me anymore," she said quietly, her voice steady and sure. For a moment, the entire office stopped breathing. Amelia picked up her bag and walked toward the door. No one moved. No one spoke. Richard stared at the envelope, his face tightening, but Amelia didn't look back. Raised in a single-parent household, Amelia Brooks learned responsibility earlier than most people her age. Her father left when she was only 10, leaving her mother to raise her and her younger brother, Ethan. Amelia stepped in to help wherever she could, working part-time jobs through high school and college, just to keep food on the table and the lights on. She dreamed of the day when she could finally get a stable, well-paying job to take care of her family properly, especially her mum, who had sacrificed so much, and Ethan, who was now in college, studying engineering. When Amelia got hired at Hale & Company, a finance firm, 3 years ago, it felt like her big break. She had graduated near the top of her class, and landing a position in one of the city's top firms was supposed to be the reward for all her hard work. On her first day, she was nervous but excited, determined to prove herself. Back then, she even admired her boss, Richard Hale. He was sharp, confident, and everyone seemed to respect him. But things changed quickly. Richard's confidence turned out to be arrogance. He micromanaged every detail, checked up on employees constantly, and often raised his voice when things didn't go his way. At first, Amelia thought he was just demanding, and that if she worked hard enough, she could earn his trust. Instead, it only got worse. He criticized her in front of others, took credit for her ideas during meetings, and made her feel small every chance he got. The hardest part wasn't even Richard himself. It was how the office had adapted to his behavior. People who were friendly to Amelia when she first joined became distant. They had seen others clash with Richard and knew how it ended: public humiliation and often quiet resignations. No one wanted to risk being the next target. Jenna, the closest thing Amelia had to a friend at work, gave her advice one afternoon after yet another tense meeting. "Just keep your head down, Amelia," Jenna whispered. "Don't make yourself a target. It's not worth it." That one sentence said it all. Everyone was scared. Everyone had learned to stay silent, even when they knew something was wrong. Amelia felt more and more isolated as time went on. She had no one to talk to about how miserable she was, except for her mom and Ethan. But she didn't want to burden them. Her mom already worked long hours at a local clinic, and Ethan was focused on his studies, so Amelia carried it all alone. She told herself she could handle it because she had to. She paid most of the bills at home, helped cover Ethan's tuition, and made sure her mom didn't have to stress about money. Walking away from her job wasn't an option, not when her family depended on her. Every time she thought about quitting, she reminded herself of the rent, groceries, tuition, and medical bills. But over time, the stress took its toll. She stopped sleeping well and woke up every morning with a heavy feeling in her chest, dreading the day ahead. She questioned her worth, wondering if maybe she really wasn't good enough. Maybe Richard was right. Maybe she was useless. Yet deep down, she knew it wasn't true. She worked late every night, often picking up tasks no one else wanted. Her reports were accurate. Her clients trusted her, and she went out of her way to help new hires when they were struggling. Amelia gave everything she had to this job, but all she got in return was humiliation and fear. She stayed because of her family, but each day chipped away at her confidence a little more. She had dreamed of a career in finance that would change her life, but now it felt like she was stuck in a nightmare she couldn't escape. And that was before the morning Richard Hale shouted at her in front of the entire office. That day would change everything. After the humiliation in front of the whole office, Amelia walked straight to HR. Her hands were still shaking, and she had to force herself to speak calmly. She explained what had happened, how Richard shouted at her and called her useless for a tiny mistake. She hoped someone would finally listen, that maybe this time things would change. The HR manager, a middle-aged man with a forced smile, listened quietly. Then he said, "Richard is an important asset to this company. You should try to work it out with him directly." Amelia blinked, shocked. "Work it out?" He screamed at me in front of everyone. The man shifted uncomfortably, but repeated, "He's valuable to the company. Just do your best to avoid conflict." That was it. No support, no accountability, just a quiet message. Richard could do whatever he wanted, and she had to endure it. Amelia left HR, feeling smaller than ever, her chest tight with frustration. She walked down the hallway toward her desk, but stopped when she heard voices coming from Richard's office. His door was slightly open. She recognized his voice instantly. "She'll never find another job," Richard laughed. "People like her think they're special, but she's nothing. I'm doing her a favor, keeping her here." Another male voice chuckled in response. Amelia stood frozen, every word burning into her. That was how he really saw her. Not just an employee who made a mistake, but someone worthless in his eyes. Something inside her shifted at that moment. For months, she had felt fear. Every time Richard raised his voice, every time he leaned over her desk and criticized her work. But now, that fear was gone, replaced by something else: anger. If the company wouldn't protect her, she would protect herself. If Richard thought she was nothing, she would prove him wrong. That night, Amelia sat in her small apartment with her laptop open, thinking hard. She couldn't just quit and let him win. He would laugh about it and probably ruin her chances of getting another job, just like Jenna had warned her. But she had something he didn't know: years of emails, project files, and memories of moments when he had stolen her work and claimed it as his own. She opened her email archives and began searching. There it was, her client pitch presentation from last year, which she had built from scratch, with Richard's name later attached as the creator. There were messages where he dismissed her suggestions, only to present them as his own. Later in meetings, she started saving everything onto a separate drive: emails, timestamps, even screenshots. Over the next week, Amelia kept her head down at work, but this time, it wasn't out of fear. It was focus. She bought a small audio recorder and kept it in her bag, just in case he lashed out again. She kept notes of every hostile remark, every time he dismissed her work in front of clients, and every project he took credit for. At night, she built a file, one she could show HR, senior management, or even lawyers, if it came to that. For the first time in months, she felt something like control. She wasn't just a victim waiting for the next insult. She was planning her way out, not by running away, but by fighting back. By the end of the week, Amelia made up her mind. She wasn't just going to resign quietly and disappear, like so many before her. She would leave, yes, but not before exposing Richard for what he really was. He had laughed and said she would never find another job. That part was wrong too, because she had already started sending her portfolio to other companies, and one had already responded, interested in meeting her. For the first time in a long time, Amelia didn't feel powerless. She felt ready. Richard humiliated her again. During a client meeting, the room was full of important people, and Amelia had prepared everything carefully. But when the client asked about a report, Richard suddenly turned on her. "This report is late," he said sharply, staring at her as if she had failed on purpose. "What to train, given a filled piece me. Sive, do you know how embarrassing this is for me?" Sigh. Amelia froze. The report had been sitting in his inbox for 3 days, waiting for his approval, but he never responded. She opened her mouth to explain, but Richard cut her off. "Don't make excuses. This is your responsibility. Do your job properly, or don't do it at all." His words stung, echoing in the silent room. She felt everyone's eyes on her. A couple of co-workers gave her quick, pitying glances, then looked away. Nobody would say anything in her defense. Amelia lowered her gaze, clenched her hands under the table, and kept quiet. She had learned the hard way that arguing with Richard in front of clients only made things worse. But inside, something cracked. Enough was enough. She had tolerated his insults for months, believing she had no choice. But this was different. This was public humiliation, and unfair. She felt anger rising in her chest, stronger than the fear that used to control her. That night after work, she sat at her small kitchen table, with her laptop open. She uploaded her portfolio, projects she had completed, clients she had handled, financial reports she had written. She sent it to several companies, including one of Richard's competitors. She didn't expect much, but within 2 days, one company replied. They were impressed and wanted to set up an interview. It felt like hope. However, Richard noticed something different about her. Maybe it was the way she stopped avoiding eye contact, or how she seemed calmer than usual. He began watching her more closely. "You seem distracted, Brooks," he said one morning, his voice sharp. "You're not planning to jump ship, are you? Because you know how that ends for people." Amelia pretended not to understand, but his message was clear. He had a history of making things difficult for employees who left him. Jenna, her closest co-worker, confirmed it. "Be careful," Jenna whispered, when they were alone in the break room. "He blacklisted one guy last year, called his new employer, and said terrible things about him. The guy had to move to another city to find work." Amelia nodded silently, but inside, she was more determined than ever. She wasn't going to let fear hold her back again. She had her evidence: emails, recordings, client notes, and she wasn't afraid to use them if she had to. Still, the pressure at work grew worse. Richard started giving her impossible workloads, assigning tasks late in the day and demanding them by morning. He copied senior managers on emails criticizing her, making it look like she was the problem. Amelia worked late nights, sometimes until midnight, just to keep up. Her body ached from exhaustion, and she often fell asleep at her desk at home. But even as she suffered, she was quietly preparing. She had written her resignation letter, saving it as a draft on her computer. Next to it was her growing evidence file, ready to be handed over when the time was right. Some nights, she stared at the letter, wondering if it was worth it. Part of her just wanted to walk away quietly, start fresh, and forget everything about Richard Hale. But another part of her burned for justice. Why should he keep doing this to people and get away with it? Why should she leave silently while he stayed in power, hurting others? This inner conflict followed her everywhere. In the mornings, she woke up tired but focused, telling herself she would endure just a little longer. In the evenings, she sent follow-up emails to recruiters and updated her notes on Richard's harassment. Her interview with the rival firm went well. They were impressed not just with her technical skills, but with her ability to handle high-pressure situations. "We like leaders who don't quit when things get hard," one interviewer said. Amelia smiled politely, thinking, "You have no idea how hard things have been." Back at Hale and Company, Richard became even more aggressive, sensing she was slipping out of his control. He micromanaged her every move, questioned every number she submitted, and often hovered behind her desk like a shadow. Jenna noticed and shook her head. "He knows you're leaving," she whispered one day. "Just be careful how you do it." Amelia nodded. She had a plan, but it was risky. She wouldn't just resign. She would reveal the truth about Richard in front of everyone. But a small voice inside her kept asking, "What if it backfires? What if he ruins your career like he did to others?" She didn't have the answer yet. All she knew was that she couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change, and soon. Each night, she looked at that resignation letter, her finger hovering over the print button. "Not yet," she told herself. "Wait for the right moment." Until then, she kept her head down, smiled politely, and acted like nothing was wrong while secretly preparing for the day everything would change. Richard humiliated Amelia one final time in front of everyone. It was during the morning staff meeting. He held up a report she had finished the night before and slammed it on the table. "There's a typo right here," he shouted, jabbing his finger at a tiny mistake hardly anyone would notice. "Do you even check your work, Brooks? Or do you enjoy embarrassing this company?" The room went silent. Everyone stared at their hands or their coffee cups, avoiding Amelia's eyes. She felt their pity like a weight pressing down on her. Months ago, she would have shrunk back, apologized, and taken the blame just to stop the yelling. But not today. Amelia stood up slowly, calm and steady. "You're right," she said softly. "You won't have to worry about me anymore." Richard smirked, thinking she was finally breaking. But then she reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. She placed it on the table in front of him. "This is my resignation letter," she said, her voice clear. "And there's something else you should see." Attached to the letter was a small USB drive. Richard frowned, confused. What is this supposed to be? Before he could continue, Amelia turned to the HR manager and the senior executives sitting at the table. "I would like to speak with HR and management right now," she said, her tone professional but firm. The executives exchanged looks, sensing something serious. "All right, let's step into the conference room," one of them said. Inside the conference room, Amelia plugged the USB drive into the computer and began showing the files she had collected. "This," she said, opening the first folder, "is an email chain from our biggest client last year. You'll see the project proposal attached. That was my work, every number, every chart, but Richard submitted it under his own name." One executive leaned closer, scrolling through the timestamps and metadata. It clearly showed Amelia as the original creator. She clicked the next file, playing an audio clip. Richard's voice filled the room. "She's useless. I'm doing her a favor keeping her here." Another clip played where he shouted during a phone call, using insults that made everyone shift uncomfortably in their chairs. Finally, she opened an email from a client, praising her for saving a deal at the last minute. "This email was deleted from my inbox by Richard," she explained. "The client specifically thanked me, but Richard told management it was his work." The room was dead silent. The HR manager's face was pale. One of the executives slowly turned to Richard. "Is this true?" Richard's face flushed red. "This is ridiculous. She's making this up. She's just bitter because she can't handle pressure." But Amelia stayed calm. "All of this has timestamps and original file data. You can verify it yourselves." HR collected the USB drive and the printed resignation letter. "We're going to need to review this immediately," the HR manager said. Richard slammed his hand on the table. "You're all seriously listening to her? She's lying." One executive raised his hand, silencing him. "Richard, we need you to step aside while we investigate this." "What? You can't be serious," Richard shouted, but his voice was shaking now. Not confident like before. "It's protocol," HR said firmly. "Until this is reviewed, you're suspended from your duties, effective immediately." Richard looked around the room, his face twisted with anger. "This is a mistake. She's nothing without this job." He barked at Amelia. But Amelia didn't flinch. She stood tall, shoulders back, and simply said, "I already have another job offer." For the first time, Richard had no response. He grabbed his folder and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed in the silent room. One executive finally turned to Amelia. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll handle it from here." Amelia nodded. "Thank you for listening." As she left the conference room, employees outside were watching. They had seen Richard storm out, and Amelia walking out, calm and collected. For months, they had watched her suffer under his cruelty. Now for the first time, she felt free. Richard was gone, at least for now, and she was finally done with Hale and Company on her own terms. Amelia accepted the offer from the rival firm, and it was more than she ever expected. They didn't hire her as an analyst like she had assumed. They made her a team leader. For the first time in her career, she had people looking to her for guidance and support. And unlike her old job, she was respected. Her ideas were listened to, her work appreciated, and her confidence grew each day. Her new team welcomed her warmly. They admired how organized and calm she was under pressure. She would never treat anyone the way Richard treated her. She would lead with kindness and fairness, the way she had always wished someone would lead her. With her higher salary, life at home improved too. She was finally able to pay off some old bills and send extra money to her brother Ethan for his college tuition. Seeing the relief in her mom's eyes when she handed her the receipt for Ethan's next semester was priceless. Her mom even cried, hugging her and saying, "You've always carried so much weight, Amelia. I'm so proud of you." A few weeks later, Amelia kept another promise, one she had made years ago. She took her mom on a short vacation to the beach, something her mom had always wanted but never had the time or money for. They walked along the shore, ate at small seaside cafes, and laughed like they hadn't in years. For Amelia, it felt like life was finally moving in the right direction. At night, while looking at the ocean from their hotel balcony, Amelia thought about everything that had happened. For so long, she had let fear control her, fear of losing her job, fear of Richard ruining her reputation, fear of not being enough. She almost let it destroy her happiness. But standing up for herself had changed everything. She realized she didn't lose that day. She handed in her resignation. She won. As for Richard, his fate was quieter, but just as certain. The company finished its investigation, and the evidence Amelia provided was undeniable. Richard was terminated for misconduct, his reputation damaged beyond repair. There was no dramatic news article or public scandal, just a simple internal email announcing his departure. But everyone at Hale and Company knew the truth, and for the first time in years, the office finally felt lighter without him. Amelia didn't celebrate his downfall, but she did feel a deep sense of closure. He no longer had power over her or anyone else. Back in her new office, Amelia sat at her desk one morning, looking out the window as her team prepared for a meeting. She smiled to herself. She had faced her worst fear, and it had led her to something better. She had found her voice. She had found her freedom. And most importantly, she had found herself. Amelia, dressed confidently in her new work clothes, walked into her new office. Her team stood and greeted her with warm smiles and cheerful, "Good morning, Amelia." For the first time in years, she felt truly welcomed and respected. She walked to her desk, set down her bag, and looked around. The office was bright and full of energy, so different from the cold, tense place she had left behind. Slowly, she opened one of her desk drawers and pulled out an old envelope. It was the same resignation envelope she had handed Richard the day everything changed. She held it for a moment, remembering how scared she had felt that morning, how her hands had trembled. Now her hands were steady. She smiled and placed the envelope gently into the drawer. It would stay there, not as a memory of pain, but as a reminder of strength and courage. Taking a deep breath, she turned to her team, ready to lead their first meeting of the day. In her heart, she whispered, "That day, I didn't lose. I discovered who I truly was. Thanks for staying with us till the end of this journey." If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more powerful tales of strength, redemption, and transformation. Until next time, keep growing, keep healing.